Do you found the skeleton? How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 58, Dino Dave Strikes Back. This is our second time taking a look at the, I guess, evidence supplied by Dino Dave. Yes. Who, his real name's Bill Wurtzel. It says it right at the beginning of this video. I'm not doxing him or anything.
Wait. Is he calling himself Dino Dave, but his name's Bill?
Did I say Bill? I meant David. Did I say William?
Okay.
I did say William, didn't I? No, David, sorry. Okay, look, I was a little rushed this morning.
I'm not fully caffeinated.
Me neither.
So
Me neither. I have coffee right here. I'm drinking coffee. It has a little bit of extra something in it, just to make it a little bit more drinking game appropriate. No, but you know, it's still coffee. It's gonna get me caffeinated. It's gonna get me going. I also definitely didn't space out while playing Satisfactory this morning, and then not notice that it was like 15 minutes until the show, until my alarm went off. That's certainly not a thing that would ever happen to me. Ever. And anyone who says it did, probably telling the truth. Alright, before we actually get into this though, we have a couple things to read. Pibblepunk, half dog, half canine says, working overtime today, but I hope y'all will have fun and maybe learn some stuff. Also, AIG is a malicious mob of minuscule, mendacious members. So we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much. Okay. Dutch Tunicate Official, for $2, says, I, Dapper Dinosaur, love snow and pelagic tunicates, which is a weird thing for you to say, because you're not me, Dutch Tunicate Official. But if you want to love those things, I mean, you're objectively wrong, but you can.
I don't discriminate. You're welcome to love pelagic tunicates.
And snow.
I love you. And snow.
I don't know.
Because I don't have to like snow for other people to like it.
I just think that you're weird if you like snow.
That's fine, because I will admit to being weird.
Fair enough. Tunic 8 Geek, there you go. Member for 11 months and is at the annual level, says, hey there, I'm traveling again today. Have a nice stream. I'll watch tomorrow, and I hope we'll avoid meeting Mr. Bilbo tonight. Yay for 11 months. And yeah, first of all, congratulations on 11 months. And yes, if you guys want to avoid hearing from Bilbo again, just make sure you like this video and he won't come by. If enough of you like the video, you don't get a Bilbo. Alright, that being said, yes, we are playing the drinking game. I'm drinking coffee that's been, spiked. It's spiked. You know, it's fine. Also, I'm not going to go over the drinking rules because you guys either know them or you'll pick up on them, and I go over them every Tuesday. So, I don't care to today. In fact, I just want to get into this. Because, you know, we're often going like 10-15 minutes before we even start the video. And to be fair, a lot of that's because there's some great stuff that's coming in chat and that we want to go over. But yeah. So if you didn't see this, or sorry, you didn't see the first part of this, it was on Tuesday. We had a special Dapper Reacts Tuesday edition, and we reacted to Dino Dave. Yeah, during that, you guys met Vishanti's goal for getting her to wear her feeders. You can show up the lovely feeder cuffs, and look at that. Very nice. That could happen again, but it will depend on just how active and generous chat is. In the meantime, though, basically Dino Dave is like what happens when you order, you know, Kent Hovind from Wish.com, right? He's the kind of guy where, like, you know, you're like, oh, hey, look, this is Kent Hovind's 10-part series on his seminar series. And you're like, hey, Mom, can we buy this Kent Hovind seminar series? Mom's like, no, we have Kent Hovind seminar series at home, except it's Dino Dave. And it's not the same.
Okay, sorry, I had to swallow Pop-Tart. So, Jillian's asking me in the chat, what the countdown's about? Well, friends...
First it's a count up.
Well, count up, but, you know, we're counting down to 365, because this is Sal Cordova's bitch-made timer, and this marks 341 days that Sal Cordova has refused to actually watch Dapper Dinosaur's video on his buddy John Sanford, where Dapper,
and to let me know he has
pretty
done
much
such.
And to let him know he's done so. Wherein Dapper basically gives us two options: either John Sanford is lying or he's dumb.
Extremely dumb. Like, those are the only
and
options that
Sal
seem to be
put
available.
out 2 debunking videos responding to Dapper's series, having not watched any of it,
And of
which
course,
we found
they didn't actually,
to be bitch made.
Yeah, they did not actually respond to any of the things that I said in that series. They just responded to things he thought I said.
Yeah,
Which-
and friends, we call that straw manning, and it's also bitch made. The council has spoken, and we're getting real close to the 1-year anniversary. So if you have suggestions for how we should mark that celebration,
I like how
put them in the chat.
you say the council as if it's not basically just me with input from you.
We can be a
Alright.
council.
Sure, we're a council of 2, where one of us has veto power.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All right, everybody. Here comes some Dino Dave. Sorry, I just hit the. That's Dapper's a professional taking a drink for hitting my own mic boom. Goodness. If you're ever making a movie, don't hire me as a boom operator. I'm apparently terrible at it. Maybe I could be
your
a
arms are
gaffer.
too short.
Well, there's that too. Well, you strap it to my shoulder, at the right angle, and I can just move around. But I'd still bump it into things. Maybe I could be a gaffer. We could be the lighting guy. I don't know. Here we go.
That would lean towards supporting evolutionary theory. But what I want to do is take a big step back.
Okay, big one. But also for $4.99, Vandalia 1998 asks, so is Dino Dave a better or worse version of Kenny, aka Dr. Dino?
Dr. Dino.
Yeah, well, big quotes on the doctor. Here's the thing. I think he is worse at presenting things. However, I'm not aware of him giving aid and comfort to convicted child abusers and then letting them sleep alone in an otherwise unfurnished house on a mattress with an 11-year-old. Which is something that Kent has not only done, but it's not even like alleged. It's alleged by Kent that that's what he did, right? Kent is the one who says he did this thing. So, I'm not aware of Dino Dave having done anything like that. So when it comes to moral standing, Dino Dave is up on a significantly higher pedestal than Kent Hovind. When it comes to ability to present in an interesting and compelling way the alleged evidence for young Earth creationism, I think Kent does better. So it's a multi-part question.
I'm pretty sure that Dino Dave hasn't been convicted of spousal abuse.
Yeah.
Got that going for him.
Or
And
various tax cheating type things.
Or, tax fraud.
Yeah.
He didn't have to go to big boy prison.
Yeah. As far as I know, he's never been to prison.
Good.
Although, to be fair, just having been to prison is not on itself, doesn't tell you on its own anything about a person.
But it's definitely a nice thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
So, for anybody in the chat that doesn't know, they're questioning, like, a council of 2. I mean, might I remind you that the Vishanti are 3.
One
it's
more.
Agamotto, Ashtur, and Hoggoth. So, that's a council.
I guess now it's
That's
up to
5
4.
of us.
Well, who's the 5th one?
Yeah.
Wait, who's the 5th one?
Well, I'm the vessel,
Oh, do you get your own independent voice apart from theirs?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends on the topic.
Okay. So, maybe up to 5.
Maybe up to 5.
Okay, but mostly 4, I guess.
Well,
sometimes 2.
Look at the broad view of all the fossils we see in all our fossil archives and all the different museums and different collections. And I want to give you some really big general observations about the fossil record.
Let's hope that these aren't just random suppositions made by Dwayne Gish one day while just having a chat over at the ICR offices. Because a lot of times when creationists give you broad facts about the fossil record, they're just things that Dwayne Gish said one day at a chat at ICR, and he wasn't...
and everybody just repeated it.
Yeah, but the thing is, even he wasn't saying that these were the actual numbers. He was saying things like, well, let's say about... because it seems reasonable, about like 95% of fossils are marine. And the thing is, it's probably not far off. You don't get to just repeat that as if it's gospel because John or Dwayne Gish said it, right? That's not how that works.
1, the fossil record is characterized by abrupt appearance.
Broadly speaking.
Objection? I mean, I'm objecting because his idea of abrupt is not what scientific consensus.
That's why it's kind of, right? It's true that, like, the fossil appearance of most individual species is relatively abrupt, but, like, the appearance of larger taxa like reptiles as a whole, or amphibians, or tetrapods, or mammals, is absolutely not very abrupt, and we have lots of great transitionals. In fact, I'm displaying many of them above Vishanti, right over her head. Be careful that they don't fall on you, because fossils are heavy.
Oh no!
Oh, you almost got crushed by Heterodontosaurus.
Oh no! I mean, I've got 2 fossils sitting within arm's reach right now.
Oh? What do you got? Come on, show them off.
Okay, hang on. I have to get it out of the package.
All right, well, I'm going to hit play while you do that.
Keep it safe. Okay.
Oh.
Megalodon!
Here we go.
Some of the enamel's still on it. This is from Fossil Daddy. He recovered this in North Carolina. And I'm very proud of my Red Sea Pharaoh chariot wheel.
Yes, that is proof positive of the historical accuracy of Exodus. Right there, because
this is definitely not just coral from the Red Sea.
Yeah, that is the wheel of Pharaoh's chariot in particular, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He signed the back and everything.
Scratching hieroglyphics back there.
Yeah.
I'm going to support these assertions all with quotes from evolutionists, and for every one I give, I could probably give another 20 or 30 of them.
Yes, we too have been to the various websites that collect quote mines specifically for the use by young Earth creationists. It's a whole cottage industry. There are actually published books, like physical books you can look through, that are just out of context quotes from so-called evolutionists that creationists use. Like, it's an amazingly dishonest industry, young Earth creationism. Because the thing is, that's not how you do quotations. You actually go and look at the original thing, and you make damn well sure that the quote actually, in context, supports the point you're trying to make. And in these cases, it never does. But, okay.
These really aren't in dispute.
Queen Necra the Second says, oh, hey, I'm catching a Dapper live stream, or Dapper stream live, and I'm 10 drinks ahead already. Got married 2 days ago and still low-key celebrating. Vishanti looking stunning with feeders as always. Mazel tov on your wedding.
Congrats. Look, we're going to take a drink. Cheers to Queen Necra on your wedding. Congratulations. May you have many happy married years.
Yes.
Amongst, for example, paleontologists. Here's Stephen Jay Gould, Harvard University, leading evolutionist, in his book Panda's Thumb. All paleontologists know the fossil...
I mean, he was very prominent back in, like, the 80s and 90s. He really was.
He's the king of evolution.
Yeah, he's not that, though. That's the thing.
I think he may have abdicated his throne and Neil deGrasse Tyson usurped it.
As the king of evolution, the guy who almost never talks about evolution?
Well, yeah, because if you're a famous science communicator, you must be an atheist evolutionist.
I mean, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson probably is an atheist, but...
Maybe there's, like, a War of the Roses going on between Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay.
To see, like, who ends up being the king of evolution.
Which side is
king of the atheists.
Which side is the Lancastrian?
You know what? I don't know.
Okay, but I guess that also means you don't know which side is the Yorkist side.
I don't... I was just making this...
You didn't expect me to continue on with actually asking questions related to the War of the Roses?
I mean, I didn't not expect it, but I wasn't going to, like, take it any further than that.
Alright, that's fair enough. Here we go.
Record contains precious little in the way of intermediate forms. Transitions between major groups are characteristically abrupt.
Yeah.
And what did he mean by abrupt? Dave? Dan? Dino? Whatever his name is?
For one thing, he meant they happen over the course of, tens of thousands of years rather than millions of years. But for another thing is that there's also a very easy to find quote where he points out that transitions between major groups are in fact abundant, and while the transition may itself be relatively abrupt, for instance, we go from having things looking very lizard-like to looking very much like a mammal skeleton over the course of a few tens of millions of years, which is very fast in terms of the fossil record. Also, let's see. Someone whose name has way more Japanese than I'm going to be able to read on top right now because my ability to read Japanese is extremely limited. Who's been a member for 13 months and is at the amniote level says AIG on... I'm not sure what language we're even going for. On Pusna. I'm going to go ahead and take a drink because I'm pretty sure I know what it's supposed to mean. I just don't know what language we're going for here. And also, feeders is another thing that person says. And then Ben Paluto, Thick Tunicate B2022, gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Then went to Alex Markle, Katina, Pac Bays, Cognitive Trifurcation, Al Trucker, and Vadim Slavsky, Radchenko, and Queen Necrod II also got one.
Yay!
There you go. There's our wedding present.
There's your wedding gift, yeah.
There you go. All right, so let's take 5 more drinks.
I also really love, while you're drinking, I love seeing familiar names popping up in the Diablo Critics stream that I wasn't here for.
Yes.
I just watched it yesterday while I was getting caught up, and the panel having no idea how to react to your display names was pretty great. Like,
yeah, every time
Kip
you guys
got
go
it because
anywhere,
he's been on your channel, but it was just entertaining.
It's always great whenever I see my audience members anywhere because they're so obvious because they've got these really weird display names that are in jokes that only really work.
Very, very niche in jokes. Yeah, it's great.
All right, here we go.
I always do the Leonardo DiCaprio like snap meme.
Yes.
You know those people, you know. Yeah.
Maybe there's this type of an organism, also poof, there's this type of an organism, and we don't find those in-betweens.
Okay, Dave, I know you can't see what I'm doing, you can't hear me, right? But right over to your left, everyone else is right above Vishanti, 2 spots above me, a bunch of transitional forms. They're right there. I mean, do we need the yodel to emphasize it? We might. Yep.
Etc.
See? It's right there. There's even yodeling to accompany it now.
This one just abruptly appears fully formed.
Okay, there's another thing. I've never gotten a creationist...
What would it even mean to be half-formed?
Exactly. I've never gotten a creationist to tell me what it would mean to be less than fully formed for an organism. Is it like you started to grow into a human, but then your arms didn't come out all the way, and now you have stubs? Because that's not what evolution would predict. Is it like, oh,
we just have thousands of fossils of terminated, like, fetuses or whatever, like,
it seems
not being fully formed?
It seems like they must mean that, like,
mean?
something that hasn't, quote unquote, evolved yet, but is in the process, would just be
Kyle
basically
Pratt.
a fetus, going around. Go ahead.
Kyle Pratt says looking for an anamorph.
Roastin' Keller for $9.99 says, this stream still sponsored by Mountain Dew Baja Blast, which currently is celebrating its 20th anniversary at Taco Bell, or find it in the the drink fridges at the store near you. Wait, they're selling it in stores now?
Oh
my goodness, I might have to go
get... Blast Sheep, have you any wool?
I might have to go get myself a few liters of Baja Blast.
Oh my god, yeah!
Man, that can be my new RPG drink for a while. Although I didn't get any RPGs in this week, and I'm very disappointed.
Oh.
I'm in 2 games right now, one running, one as a player, and both fell through, and I'm very sad. I'm not angry about anyone, but everyone had really good reasons why it couldn't happen, but still. Very disappointing. Anyway.
Fully formed.
Fully formed.
And probably the biggest problem in this regard for evolutionists is something called the Cambrian explosion.
It's the Cambrian explosion.
I'm just going to take a drink. For the Cambrian explosion is a huge problem for evolution, which would be news to virtually every evolutionary biologist and paleontologist that you could possibly talk to.
I just have a feeling somewhere Joel Dust going, not the Cambrian explosion!
See, when people say, like, this is the biggest problem, it's like telling someone, like, hey, do you know what the biggest problem for global navigation is the latitude and longitude coordinate system? And people just, what are you talking about? That's just a thing. Everyone knows about it. What? How is that a problem? It's not. It's just a thing. It's a thing that happened. Everyone knows about it. There's literally no one sitting around in evolutionary biology thinking like, okay, how can we explain how this Cambrian explosion could have possibly happened? There's literally nothing unusual about it, except that it's the first event of its kind that's evident very clearly in the fossil record, right? So the fossil record is full of adaptive radiations, which is all the Cambrian explosion was, in which various groups of organisms find that a whole bunch of new niches are open, and so they rapidly evolve to fill all these niches, resulting in a huge diversity of life from certain groups. So certain groups massively diversify, and now we have a whole new ecosystem full of these groups, all based on these earlier organisms. The Cambrian explosion is just the first time that it very clearly happened in the fossil record. It's probably not the first time it happened at all, but it's the first time we really get to watch it happen in the fossil record. And that's it. That's all it is. It's not anything particularly unusual. It's not even particularly rapid. The only thing that makes it seem rapid and unusual is that because it's so early in the history of macroscopic, especially animals, the divisions that start happening during the Cambrian end up being major divisions today between like phyla or subphyla. Roasting the Keller for $4.99 says AIG is a satchel of conditions that should not exist for longer than 4 hours without seeing a doctor. Take a drink for that.
I love this. This is so great.
Try not to get that condition because one of the primary treatments for that is lancing.
In these lower layers, which evolutionists date till 600 million years.
Vishanti just got horrified.
Well, because my brain...
Well, it's going to get out some way.
Wow, that's the much less fun version of sounding. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, and then...
Years ago, you have all of the major designs, all the major types of life forms, the phyla, appearing in a geological instant. Like,
yeah, but the thing is, I'm going to take a drink. It is. Okay. So at a very basic level...
Damn, we already got a bingo.
What's the difference between a chordate and a panarthropod? They're both actually segmented. They both have extensions from segments that can occur. Fundamentally, the big difference between those two is a couple things. One is that the notochord, or the main nerve cord, right, runs along the top of a chordate, and it has a little bit of extra cartilage around it. And then things like the digestive tract and the kidneys and the heart and whatnot run along the bottom of the animal. Whereas in panarthropods, the nerve cord runs along the bottom of the animal, and the heart and the digestive system and whatnot run along the top. Is that really such an amazing, crazy thing to have evolved? Is basically one animal flipped itself upside down, and that's how it kind of just decided to move around?
I'm going to agree with Atomic Squirrel. The difference between them is that a chordate plugs into a wall.
Oh, okay. Well, but you see what I mean? Is like once you actually drill into what the most basic differences are between these body plans, it actually turns out that there's not that big of a difference. And it's the kind of difference that is starting to evolve early on in animal history. So what you should expect is that as you go back in time, the splits that are happening today are reflected in larger and larger groups, right? So if you go back, say, 20 million years, you're not really seeing too many new whole families appear. You're seeing genera and species appear. If you go back, say, 50 million years, now you're starting to see what we now think of as families evolving, right? Like, this is where it's like, okay, so this is going to be rhinos and tapirs and horses, but the first rhino and the first tapir and the first horse that we know of all look almost completely identical if you look at their skeletons. Good luck telling them apart. But then as you go into, say, like 120 million years ago, we're starting to see divisions that, when taken out to the present point, right, are differences in, like, order, right? Like, that's where a lot of the orders in mammals and even many reptiles are starting to evolve. When you get all the way back to the Cambrian, yeah, we're talking about phyla. But if you were there at the time on the ground, you would not see what later became differences between phyla as huge differences, right? Like, what's the big difference between Anomalocaris and Hallucigenia and any of the bivalved arthropods? I mean, it's relatively minor. It looks like the kind of differences we today would call family differences. Maybe class differences. Maybe. Probably more like order. But they're actually phylum differences at this point. All right, we got a couple things. Let's see. Let me make sure I get all of them. Ben Pluto, Thick Tunicate B2022 for 5 pounds says, speaking of animorphs, the Andalites' extra eyes were mounted on stalks that suspiciously resemble AIGs.
Nice.
Nice. Let's see. Laserfan17, who's been a member for 8 months, says all the major types of life except for any of their modern forms. Where's my Cambrian dinosaur? Yeah, that's a good question. Noruma Umbohide says, what's the C with the C? I'm gonna try.
With the Sevilla?
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go for it. R is a tap,
Nomura Nobuside?
but it's more of a instead of a oo. So it's like Nomura Nobuside. If that's what the C is, it could be like a chi, or I'm not sure. But anyway, and then also for $2 says the user under-rounder and R is a tap. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and take a drink because I'm confident that has something to do with Answers in Genesis. Which really, okay, here's the hack. If you just send something
I
in a
think they're
language
just trying to tell you how to
know,
pronounce the Japanese display name.
Oh, I'm going to take a drink anyway because I already called it.
Yep.
Oh, okay. You could have just said that was Japanese, and I probably would. Nomura Nobuside. Well, is it Nobuside? Is it a TS? What do we got here? I'm going to go ahead and say it's
I don't know how to read Japanese.
I don't either. My Japanese is horrible.
Poof, they appear almost like out of nowhere, like they were just created. And
Alex Markle says the C used in facade. Yeah, I know. But like every language that uses it has a different way to refer to it, and I never know which one to use.
Mm-hmm.
a geological instant. Here you have, again, a quote from Stephen Jay Gould. He says, the fossil record has caused Darwin more grief than joy. Nothing distressed him more than the Cambrian explosion, the coincident appearance of almost all complex organic designs.
I mean, who cares what some guy from 40 years ago thought about some guy from 150 years ago? The fact is, we have the transitional forms. No matter how many times you quote the panda's thumb, it doesn't make those fossils above Vishanti's head go away. Those remain fossils supporting like the origin of tetrapods, various groups of ray fin fish. We're back to tetrapods, frogs, right? Early tetrapods, early turtles, right? We're in
Pitalax?
Yep.
Those are too late.
Snakes, early snakes with legs, early rhamphorhynchoid pterosaurs, early proto-dinosaur dinosauromorphs. We're getting into, like, we just saw one of the earliest thyreophorans that later evolved into the stegosaurids and the ankylosaurids, right? Like, they're all over the place.
The Cambrian explosion. I've talked about this for years, but last night I
Have you ever read about it during any of those years?
went home. I opened up a website called Evolution News that I look at from time to time.
That is the Discovery Institute's website. That is, in fact, a creationist website. I'm just going to take a quick
bunch
drink.
of hacks.
Remember that time he said he was going to support all of this with quotes from quote-unquote evolutionists? And now he's quoting from Evolution News? So you think he's just dumb, or was that a lie? You know, let's put it in a poll. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong button. Here comes a poll.
Someone needs to let Dan McClellan know that we're the only thing on YouTube right now.
Yeah, how dare Dan go live?
How dare?
All right, here we go. So is Dino Dave just stupid using Evolution News, or is he a liar? We're gonna have stupid and liar.
Turtle.
No, I want actual answers.
And this was the article that appeared in my inbox last night.
Okay, so you not only do you occasionally look at Evolution News, you signed up for their email list. Okay, buddy.
It says, why evolutionary biologists are fatigued by Darwin.
I'm glad I was correct.
About what?
I pronounced it correctly on my first try. It's palatal fricative.
Oh, okay. So like a Nomura Nobuhide. Well, that's okay. Palatal fricative. It's not one of my best sounds. I'm not very practiced at it. I don't think I know any languages that use it. So,
quote: increasingly, evolutionary biologists acknowledge in the peer-reviewed literature that there is a serious problem with the modern Darwinian synthesis.
I don't care what a bunch of creationists think is a problem for evolution. They're like the least qualified people to talk about that.
Also, what I'm pretty sure they're talking about right now is the extended evolutionary synthesis people who basically whine that their pet theories aren't given center stage in evolutionary biology. And that's it. That's their best argument. The only other argument they have is like, well, how do you tell if what's being selected for is the thing you think it's being selected for? And the answer is just, we do an experiment. Check. There you go. Roasting the Keller for $9.99 says, where two... TWO, I think. Where two organisms like canine transmissible venereal tumor fit in with where do organisms like canine transmissible venereal tumor fit in with current evolutionary theory, multicellular organism that became a unicellular organism that lives separately. I mean, so basically, from a phylogenetic standpoint, canine transmissible venereal tumor, as well as like the facial tumor that Tasmanian devils get, those are ultimately phylogenetically. I mean, that's a dog. That is in fact a domesticated dog. Now, because they're so radically reduced, they probably wouldn't be resolved as such if all you were doing was a character-based study. But from a genetic standpoint, yeah, that's a dog. It's an animal, it's a chordate, it's a vertebrate. It's one that's lost literally all of its anatomy beyond just being a single cell. So it's sort of like how snakes are still tetrapods, even though they don't have legs, which is one of the key features of being a tetrapod, or at least most of them don't have legs. That doesn't remove them from being tetrapods. And basically, canine transmissible venereal tumor is basically just a radically reduced, now parasitic dog. It is a single-celled parasitic dog. Which is weird, but it's true. And also, I believe that earlier, Kent Hovind went on record, by earlier I mean like a few weeks ago, went on record saying that if a multicellular organism turned into a unicellular organism, that would in fact be a difference of kind, which means we have seen dogs give rise to non-dogs. So My Infinite Journey for $2 says, Evolution News, it's in the name, duh, with a winky face. Yeah, obviously it must be a pro-evolution website. Pibblepunk, half dog, half canine for $5 says, quote mining Stephen Jay Gould specifically could be a drink trigger all its own. Oh yeah, they love Stephen Jay Gould quote mines. Because the thing is, Stephen Jay Gould was a critic of gradualism, and he put forth his own, now mostly disregarded theory. There's aspects of it that are still reasonable, but most of what he was talking about, like species selection and all that stuff, no one's buying anymore. But yeah, they love it because every time he criticizes gradualism, they just take that as him criticizing evolutionary biology as a whole, which he's definitely not doing. All right.
Cambrian paleontologist Simon Conway Morris calls it Darwin fatigue. According to Conway Morris, the unresolved problems exposed by the Cambrian explosion,
I would love to hear some of them named,
have opened the way to a post-Darwinian world.
I gotta tell you, okay, hold on. We need to find something out. I'm gonna just Google Charles Darwin. Okay. We have been in a post...
Ernie Matthews for $3.33 says AIG is a bag of disappointingly small ones.
You can drink for that. You know, there's a company that will send people a bag full of gummy dicks. You just send people bags of dicks.
I've eaten a bag of dicks.
Nice. Are they actually like quality gummies? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
There's also like hard candies that they're kind of like sweet tarts. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we get like fancy jelly bean style ones though? Because like like the Jelly Belly ones where they actually taste like all sorts of crazy things that you would never expect a jelly bean to taste like. Get some of those. By the way, we've been in a post-Darwinian world, I would say, since April 19th, 1882. Yeah. Because here's the thing, right? While we might give the various titles of theories, like we might name them after important figures in the development of that theory, Charles Darwin did not come up with the theory of evolution by natural selection completely on his own. He did not get it to the point it is now on its own, and we have added the ideas of many people that Charles Darwin would not have agreed with into the broader theory of evolution. Identifying evolution with Darwin is just as dumb as, say, identifying atomic theory with, like, an ancient Greek philosopher. It doesn't make any sense.
We're in a post-Newtonian world, Dapper.
We are in a post-Newtonian world. It's true. Ben Pluto Thick Tunicate B2022 for £5 says, AIG, what a sack of slimy, silly, seeping snakes secured to scrunched up skin sack. Jeez. Which actually reminds me, the fact that the word lisp has an S in it seems like some kind of cruel joke played on people with lisps.
It's very cruel.
Yeah.
I had to go through speech therapy in elementary school, and that used to really piss me off.
Yeah. It's like, come on, guys. You could just call it anything else. It just doesn't have an S in it.
Though you wouldn't hear it from Bill Nye the Science Guy, and you won't read it in high school or...
Imagine thinking...
Like Bill Nye's winning this front on the war.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Notable evolutionary biologist researcher. Guys, Bill Nye the Science Guy is a science communicator. And while I have nothing in particular against him, although I do have some quibbles with things he's done in the past, like, promoted some kinds of anti-vax nonsense. That was only temporarily, and overall, I have nothing in particular against the guy. But he's not a research scientist. He's not a leading mind in any field of science at all. He's doing basically what I do. He's a science communicator. He can read some papers. He knows a fair bit about a bunch of different scientific disciplines. But he is not the arbiter of what science is. He's not an expert in any particular field beyond maybe mechanical engineering, because that's where he's actually has
he's
training
an
and
engineer.
experience. Yeah,
that's what his degree's in, if I'm not
outside
mistaken.
of and he's actually worked as a mechanical engineer. Like, he helped design numerous various airplane parts. And he says for Boeing, which he used to say with pride. I wonder if now he might say that with some trepidation. But then again, I'm pretty sure all the planes he worked on have since been phased out. So, and to be fair, the problems with Boeing are largely a problem of quality control and not of engineering.
Yeah, it's not an engineering problem. It's we want to save money, so we're cutting corners. On like maintenance and safety problem.
Which is the place you shouldn't be cutting corners. Like, come on, guys. Your plane shouldn't be literally falling apart. That's never a good sign. Let's see. Jillian Vector of Progress Ren says, for both me and you, it's believed to be imitative and dating back to late Old English. Oh, lisp. Yeah, that... I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't have a very explicable origin. I'm just saying it just
sucks.
It sucks that that word has an S in it. It's literally describing the inability to say words with S correctly. Very, very annoying.
College biology textbook, real-life biologists now live in the wild west of evolutionary thinking, where
What does it mean? Maybe he'll tell us.
I don't know.
Also, roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer, which is a real thing, for $1.99 says, AIG is a bold italic bagel of dings. In italics. Thank you very much. Here we go.
multiple models compete to replace neo-Darwinism. Why is this? Current research shows that the number of organisms and the generations required for the neo-Darwinian mechanism to produce complex features far exceeds the probabilistic resources realistically available.
Listen, I really feel like because we're in a post-Newtonian world, we really need to interrogate the Einsteinian model and think about neo-Newtonianism.
Yeah.
There's just too much to be said there. Why can't we harmonize all of this? Huh?
That's a good question. Also, I do want to point out that what he's referencing here is the waiting time problem. Now, the waiting time problem is not the reason that anyone who's currently trying to say that they're challenging the modern evolutionary biology, right? It doesn't have a great, easy name that I can just spit out. That's not what any of them are doing, right? None of them are saying the waiting time is a problem. Because here's the thing, the waiting time isn't a problem. In order to get the waiting time to sound like a problem, people like John Sanford, Robert Carter, and other DI loons make several assumptions. One of which is that in order for mutations, beneficial phenotypes, which require more than one mutation to come about, those mutations must actually be specified, and there is only one way to get that beneficial phenotype, or the benefit of that phenotype, besides that one sequence, which we know isn't true. In fact, in actual experiments, when we look for specific function from sequence space, in some cases, we can get as high as 10% of sequence space of a given size being functional for that purpose. I remember there was specifically an experiment in which the promoter for the lac operon in several various strains of bacteria, which is the operon that produces lactase, which is how bacteria can do things like turn your milk bad, or make yogurt, right? They need a lac operon so they can eat lactose. That operator is about 100 base pairs long. And it was taken out and replaced with literal noise, right? Just a random sequence generated completely at random 100 base pairs. 10% of those bacteria went on to actually be able to promote their lac operon and continue digesting lactase, which means that out of 100 base pair sequence, 10% of them are already functional promoters right off the bat.
And those coding pairs and whatnot, can they like have a conversation with my gut bacteria? Because I would love to be able to process lactase without assistance.
Well, unfortunately, that wouldn't actually be you doing it. The bacteria in your gut are already doing it, and that's part of the problem.
They're just not that great at it. Like, they have a very, like, narrow limit. And that's the problem.
I don't know how to do that.
I would like to ban that without outside assistance. That'd be great.
Of the remaining 90%, about 60% were 1 point mutation away from being a functional promoter. And then of that total, what is that, like 65% or so? Oh, goodness, sorry, that was professional. I was bumping my stupid boom again. So that's a total of basically 55% of random sequences can function as a promoter for an operon in a bacterium with a single mutation. So it's not a single mutation that's necessarily needed. Further, they also, creationists, put the order of fixation of these mutations as they have to happen sequentially. So one mutation has to fix before the other one can even occur. That's a nonsense assumption. They also completely ignore recombination and only model haploid organisms, not diploid organisms. So, let's see. Is it that there's only one possible sequence that can perform a particular function in sequence space? No. So that's one violation. That's already waiting time done. But let's keep going. Is it the case that mutations have to fix sequentially before other mutations in a target string can occur? No. There's another assumption gone. Are, in fact, all organisms haploid organisms with no recombination? No, so that's another one, completely gone. So, yeah, every single assumption of the waiting time problem is, in fact, nonsense. And we also have observed instances of organisms with coordinated mutations that have occurred in historical times. And here's the thing, if the waiting time problem were true, it should take several billion years for SIV to evolve into HIV. I feel like it happened not that long ago.
Yeah, that's what, 30, 40 years ago? Maybe 50
So
at
the
the
most
outset?
likely actual occurrence of HIV first was probably in the 50s. So we're probably looking more at like 70 years ago. And it just didn't... Like, at first it's going to be a tiny little few people, probably in Africa, because that's probably where... that is definitely where it came from as a basis of just, you know, genetic sequencing of HIV versus SIV. Coop23 for $5 says, he was only 1 point mutation away from retirement. Oh... Amazing. Look, I gotta say, if you're a cop and you're like less than a week away from retirement, use up all your sick days. Just do it. Don't go to work. It's not going to be a good time. You're going to die. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So yeah, we know that HIV over the course of, and we can tell like with mutation accumulation rates and whatnot, how closely related it is to SIV. It's very closely. We can know that in the span of only a few decades, probably less, HIV had coordinated mutations that allowed it to infect humans and then become a pandemic in the human population. So, yeah.
Over the history of life on Earth. It's just not plausible. Even assuming all the best scenarios for evolution, it's not plausible that these complex organic designs would come about in a geological instant.
Yeah, according to the Discovery Institute. Okay, here's the thing. I'm already out of coffee because apparently I just drank my coffee too fast. So we're going to take an early break. I'm going to get myself some more coffee. We're going to come back. We're going to get more of this guy. I might also pour myself a cold drink because it's actually kind of getting warm in here. It's officially spring, and so now like the outside temperature is getting warmer than the inside like heater set point. And we're not willing to turn the AC on yet, obviously. Because,
That's okay.
March.
You're going to get all of our rain starting probably later tonight.
Yeah, later tonight and tomorrow. Yep, I am. I already know.
Bingo!
Yeah. In case anyone's wondering, I always have Vishanti's weather, but like 20 to 30 hours later. Every time. This is how it goes. All right, so I will be back with some fresh coffee with additional spiking. Actually, just made a pot of coffee fresh for this. Part of the reason that I was so away during the pre-show is because I was getting another pot of coffee ready. So here we go. I'm going to get some fresh pot of coffee. You guys can enjoy, hopefully, the musical stylings of Beethoven, and it's not just muted like last time, because I don't know how that happened, but it did. And I also hopefully won't be on a hot mic like another time recently. So, yeah, here we go. Okay, we are back, and hopefully that wasn't muted. Also, we have a couple things, or one thing. Officially unofficial suborbital platypus, who's been a member for 13 months, says, I think this is supposed to be Irish or something.
Welsh?
Maybe. Well, I think it's. How about this? I think it's a Celtic language, and I know none of those, and I'm not going to be able to successfully pronounce it. But may AIG Safo I don't know. But I'll take a drink for it. Take a drink for it.
All right.
All right, so now that we are back from a somewhat early break, I'll just go into my post-break thing. Guys, this channel is almost entirely supported directly through your support. Ad money is relatively minor on YouTube, and it's been less now than usual because not AIG, but it seems like it's been AIG. YouTube has just been like, you know what? What if we just don't give as many impressions of your videos, despite the fact that you're getting more than usual click-through rate? It's like, so you just turn the off button on views for my channel, huh? Yeah, that's basically what's happening. Because how else do you explain better than average click-through rate and lower than average views? The only option is that fewer impressions are going out. And that's something that's up to YouTube. So as a result, and I'm not saying that anyone at YouTube is making this decision, right? Because no one's controlling the algorithm that way. But yeah, the algorithm has just in the last couple months decided to just say, people don't get to see Dapper Dinosaur videos in their news feeds. Which makes it even more important that you guys, if you're enjoying this, that you think about supporting. Now, if you're currently not supporting and you want to, there's some great ways to do it. There's the Patreon and the channel memberships are two of the biggest ones. The Patreon is linked in the description. There's a little join button under this video where you can join the memberships. Both of those are a monthly thing, or with the Patreon, you can go annual for a 15% discount. They get you access to the Discord server that's just for supporters. We have a lot of fun there. There's all sorts of rooms for different things. And if you feel like there's a room that doesn't currently exist and needs to, you can ask me, ask the people in there. I usually make those rooms within about a day or so of people asking me, right? People were like, hey, Dapper, we need a meme dump. And I was like, all right, cool. Here's a meme dump. Like an hour later. Hey, Dapper, we should have a place to share art. I'm like, all right, cool. Art shared, you know? Basically, someone wanted to run an RPG. And so, boom, like 3 different RPG channels just appeared, right? It's very easy to ask me, and I'll get something made. So that starts at $1 a month for Patreon or $1.99 for the memberships. You also get early access to about 6 months worth of early access videos. It's crazy. And if that, like a monthly or annual thing, isn't your deal, but you still want to help out, we still have options. There's a wish list for both me and Vishanti linked in the description. Let me double check the Vishanti thing.
It is.
Yes,
I saw it
is.
before the stream.
Okay.
Right now, it seems to be mostly books, but that's, hey, if you feel led by the spirit to help me out with any of the other things on there, I'm grateful because I'm still unemployed. And
yeah, that's always good.
yeah, it's tough out there, man. Like scrolling job boards every day and all this stuff. Like,
No, it really is.
Hey Kip, why don't you tell Dan that he's cross streaming with us? Don't cross the streams. Like, we're supposed to be the only thing on YouTube right now.
Yeah, Kip, we've been doing this show for years now. So, take that. Anyway, yeah, so we both have wish lists. I have a bunch of stuff on there. There's books there. There's RPG stuff. There's dice. There's recently I added a bunch of bar stuff because you can't get like straight up liquor from Amazon, but you can get like you can get orgeat, you can get grenadine
if you use the Amazon fresh like grocery delivery, which I've used before. But
I'm not going to put fresh items on my shopping cart. Not gonna happen. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, if you want to help out that way, that's great. There's also a merch store. Like right below this video, there should be a merch shelf full of different things you can just click on. Someone, by the way, not today, sometime around like Tuesday or Wednesday, DM me and remind me to make a KJV good book title design for the merch store. I want to start selling that. I want people to be able to buy that from me.
Cool.
So I can get like $2 when you buy like a $20 item. Because that's how the merch works, in case you're wondering. Most of that goes to Teespring. I get a little bit. So yeah. And actually, I'm drinking out of a dinosaur mug today, but it's not me. It's a Dromaeosauridae of North America mug. It's got all sorts of dromaeosaurs. Very cool. They're arranged from biggest to smallest. And then there's a cool little 2-meter tall T-posing human to show how big they are.
I've made like a kind of unofficial resolution that I'm going to stop buying mugs and t-shirts because I have way too many of both. And as cool as they are, and as much joy as they have brought me, I simply do not have space for either of those things anymore. So when I think about merch, I have to think like, don't go straight for the t-shirt, don't go straight for the mug.
Okay, I actually
that is
right
harder
now,
than it seems.
I have a total of 4 mugs, and I have 1 arriving today, so that I will have 5. That is not too many. If anything, that is.
Oh no, I have an entire
too few.
cabinet,
Yeah.
and I've had to get rid of another like 20. So
right. Now we have a couple things to read, and then we're going to continue on with this. So let's see. Pillowpunk, half dog, half canine for $10 says it's quite different from what Gould originally proposed, but at least a version of punctuated equilibrium is still accepted. Also, the mismeasure of man remains a solid read for an anti-racism purpose. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it's definitely not what Gould proposed, but like I said, there is aspects of punctuated equilibrium that are still accepted. It's just, it's not what Gould originally proposed. It's minor aspects of that, right? Like the whole idea of group selection or species selection has been kind of tossed out. The idea that there are these other mechanisms that are in operation besides natural selection and genetic drift and mutation in the founder effect. It's been kind of put aside. But anyway, Roasting a Transmissible Parasitic Dog Killer for $19.99 says, Baja Blast has your back. Guess I'm going to have to go to the grocery store now and go look for a Baja Blast. I don't remember seeing it last time I was there, but I also wasn't looking for it, so... but alright, let's hit play.
So this abrupt appearance. Here's a quote from Eugene Koonin. The Cambrian explosion and animal evolution, in which all the diverse body parts appear to have emerged almost in a geological instant, is a highly publicized enigma.
Notice that's geological instant and not instant.
Yeah, and also part of this
it's almost like...
Oh, sorry.
That's different.
Yeah, and part of this is just this idea that body plans has a meaning. Like, there's been attempts to define what a phylum is on the basis of these are the organisms that have different body plans. But the problem is that when you look at higher groups, you can define a body plan for that group, right? So, like, Arthropoda today include just the arthropods, right? So, like, the crustaceans, the arachnids, the xiphosaurans, I don't remember the official... Oh, picogonids, that's the sea spiders, right? Okay, cool. But then Panarthropoda today also includes tardigrades and velvet worms. And in the Cambrian, it included an even wider range of organisms. And what this has in common is there are a group of... so we already talked about the, like the notochord or the nerve cord. I shouldn't call it a notochord. The nerve cord runs ventrally instead of dorsally. And then the other things like the heart and the digestive system run dorsally rather than ventrally like in you. And there's also repeated segments, each of which gets two projections, which are usually legs, that can optionally split somewhere down the way, but don't have to. And also can end in various little projections, like the claws of a tardigrade or something, right? And then there are certain repeated organs that have to occur in each segment, other than the reduced segments in, like, say, the head or something, that are at least primitively present in the group. And there's also a cuticle. A cuticle is an important part of this. So the cuticle grows and then also sometimes sheds, which is something that velvet worms and arthropods and tardigrades have in common. They have this cuticle that produces not necessarily an exoskeleton, but a tough outer covering. Why isn't that the body plan? And the answer is because humans decided that tardigrades and arthropods and velvet worms should be in different phyla: Tardigrada, Arthropoda, and Onychophora. But it's arbitrary, right? You can define a body plan that just unites them. There's no such thing as a body plan, as some kind of platonic ideal that exists in the realm of ideas, and that we only recognize panarthropods as participating in because of their similarity to the ideal of the arthropod body plan. Like, that's not how it works. I'm sorry, Plato, and I'm sorry all the various Christian theologians who were really into Neoplatonism, but Platonism just doesn't describe biology in any meaningful way.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the second Diablo Critics stream that happened, is just, hey, like, the only reason that we really have such an extensive understanding of Platonism is because of Christianity.
Well, and Judaism, too. There was a lot of...
Judaism, yeah, because of the... Yeah.
And then later on, there were also a lot of otherwise would have been most likely lost works that were preserved in the Arab world. Although, to be fair, about as often by Jews as by Muslims. Yeah, it turns out that a lot of what we have that has survived has two big groups to thank. One is Christian monks, and the other one is Jewish rabbis. Without those two groups, a whole lot of our ancient literature that we still have would just be gone completely. A less of it, but still a significant chunk of it, is also by various Arab philosophers. So, especially the ones who are big fans of Ibn Sina. I'm a huge fan of Ibn Sina in the controversy between Ibn Sina and Al-Ghazali. Mostly because Al-Ghazali's philosophy basically just comes down to, everything's a miracle, shut up and don't talk about it. I'm like, okay, sure.
Okay.
That doesn't help anything, but okay. Roasted a Transmissible Parasitic Dog Killer for $1.99 says, the ultimate body plan is crap. It's true. Although, here's the thing though. It's true, but it's also not true, because the only organisms that we've ever seen undergo carcinization, which is the evolution into a crab-like body plan, are in fact decapods, which is the group to which true crabs already belong. So it's a common theme among decapods.
It's a no true crab fallacy. Well,
I mean, they're just called the true crabs because they were the ones that originally got the name crab. So now they're the quote-unquote true crabs, whatever. So yeah, it's we shouldn't overplay how much carcinization is a thing, but also it is weird that decapods keep turning into crabs over and over and over. So
in biological evolution show the same pattern of sudden emergence of diverse forms at a new level of complexity. So abrupt appearance, again, I'm talking big picture. Abrupt appearance is a major feature of the fossil record. But then
again, it depends on what you mean. At the species level, yeah, tends to be. At higher levels, no. We have almost arthropods all over the fossil record. We even have almost mollusks. We have almost chordate. Well, almost vertebrates. Basically, our first chordates are pretty chordate-like, but yeah, we have almost all of these groups all over the place. Alex Marco says, in that case, the ultimate body plan is mole. That's not limited to any phylum. I mean, yeah, to some extent. Yeah, you can get mole-like arthropods, you can get mole-like tetrapods. Yeah, also snake is a very common body plan that's evolved in lots of different vertebrate groups. There have been amphibians with no limbs that look like, actually there still are, but there have been ones like the amphipoda, which actually went around on land, slithering around like snakes, catching tetrapods as their food, and they were amphibians. There have been lots and lots of fish that have turned into basically no-limb eel-like forms. The reptiles have done it. What we now need is a mammal snake. So, hey, everybody who's currently breeding ferrets, see if you can get them to turn into snakes. Call them a fur snake. It'll be great. It'll also be easier to raise and use in the fur industry because you won't have to worry about the limbs. They just come off as a big tube.
once organisms do appear, stasis. That is, they stay mostly the same, slight variations, but they pretty much stay the way they first appeared. Here's Niles Eldridge.
I love that basically the entirety of the top spot on the right side of our scene is just a constant refutation of basically this entire guy's point.
American Museum of Natural History. He says this: it's a simple and electable truth that virtually all members of a biota remain basically stable with minor fluctuations throughout their duration.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Well, we're going to talk about fitness landscapes, and I'm going to take a quick drink because I want to. I don't have a good reason. Maybe I'm going to call it because all of this has been so stupid that I have to at this point, after all this accumulation of stupidity. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, fitness landscape is a model for how evolution works in terms of natural selection. So the idea is that you have a population, and each member of the population can be seen as having a point on a 3D graph, right? So the X and the Y, we're going to use X and Y as the the 2D geographical coordinates, and Z is going to be our vertical coordinates. So the horizontal is going to be X and Y. I'm doing that because I use Blender, and in Blender, Z is vertical. So don't come at me with like Y should be vertical and Y, X, and Z should be horizontal. I don't care. Anyway, so we got X and Y coordinates as our horizontal plane, and that represents differences in morphology. So every organism gets a point on the X and Y coordinates to represent its morphology, its chemical, all of its phenotype, right? Now, as the landscape goes, it has Z direction, and the Z direction represents relative fitness in that particular environment. And so there will be different morphologies that are low fitness and high fitness. And the thing is that your amount of genetic diversity corresponds to how big of an area your entire population occupies on this. And so the organisms that occupy relatively high locations on this are relatively high fitness, which means in the next generation, the center of your area where your population exists will shift towards the higher areas. You might even get groups that split across different relatively high areas, which can lead to speciation. But let's say we ignore that for now. What this means is that over generations, you relatively rapidly climb up to a peak. And once you're at a peak, significant further morphological change means a reduction in fitness. So your population ends up just clustering around this peak until things change. So when the environment changes, that changes the landscape. And now what used to be a peak might actually be a valley or a trough or the slope of an even taller peak or something like that, right? Now that's when things change. But if the landscape remains relatively, fixed, such that the environment remains relatively fixed, then what happens is your population is going to continue to cluster around the peaks that it found when it entered that environment. So this is what evolution would expect to happen based on just the mathematical modeling of how natural selection works. Now you're going to keep undergoing evolution in terms of, like mutation fixation, molecular evolution, but that's not something that's always represented in the phenotype. If you accumulate a whole bunch of neutral mutations, it's not going to say anything about your fitness. We got a couple things to read. My Unfinished Journey for $5 says, the inner creationist arguments also persist over time with very little variation. So there. That's very true.
Amazing.
Philip Punk, half dog, half canine for $5 says, we're being serious here. The ultimate body plan is actually tube. Anything with a digestive system is just a weird tube. I mean, not entirely, because we have blind gut organisms like jellyfish and echinoderms. But yeah, that's to some extent true. Not even all echinoderms, because sea cucumbers have through guts. So just like sea stars and urchins.
I was looking through the fossil transition slideshow just now. Do you have any MOA specimens on there?
I do not.
Okay. Because this past weekend was the first time I think I've seen a MOA skeleton in person, and
you were suitably impressed.
I will probably not make fun of Australia for losing to relatives of those birds, because
that's
a big bird.
Yes, it is.
I remember looking over to Fossil Daddy and just saying, like, hey, I think this bird would drop kick me into the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And it might drop kick me through the afterlife so hard that I reincarnated.
So, by the way, is Dino Dave just stupid using evolution news, or is he a liar? 50% said stupid, 49% said liar, with 83 votes, which is really close. So I'm going to have to go ahead and say that it's indeterminate. We can't know for certain right now, or with any high confidence, whether he's just really stupid or whether he's a liar.
Well, Alex Markel's saying you've never met an emu in person. I've seen an emu and an ostrich, and I've seen videos of a cassowary. The MOA is so much bigger, all of them. It is ridiculous. And, me going through any natural history museum is pretty much a broken record of animal big, but this...
I still remember you being stopped in your tracks by a Triceratops skull. You were like, oh my god.
Yeah, because the Triceratops they had at the Harvard History Museum wasn't even close to being those.
Well, it was still juvenile.
Size. Yeah, and that's fine.
Also, Maddie's here. Hi, Maddie.
Oh, hey, Maddie! There's a difference between seeing a lot of these things in books or, on posters or as toys. And when you see them in person, the realization really clicks. Just animal big. Like when you see a giant ground sloth in person, like the skeletons, and you go, oh my god, these are 15 feet tall.
It really hits you differently.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
You see it in person, it just, wow.
I'm going to hit play.
To be alive during that time.
Yeah, it would have been crazy.
And then the fossil record is characterized by major gaps between types of organisms. Here's Ernst Mayr. He's a professor emeritus of Harvard University. He says, given the fact of evolution, one would expect the...
Professor emeritus is a great gig if you can get it. Because you know what the job requirements are of a professor emeritus?
Not a lot.
It's literally nothing. Professor emeritus is what happens when a college is like, we want this guy associated with us, but we don't want him to actually have to do anything because then he might just quit. So you're like, hey, would you like us to give you money so that we can say that you're one of our professors, but you don't actually have to do a damn thing?
Hell yeah.
Cool.
I'd take that job. Yeah,
it's a great job. Of course, to be fair, in order to become a professor emeritus, you usually have to have a long and productive career in academia. Yeah. So, oh yeah. It's less of a job and more of a retirement option, but still, great gig if you can get it.
I'd still take it.
Yeah. Hey, any colleges out there that want to make me a professor emeritus of creationism dunking? Let me know. I'll totally do it, assuming that you're like a real university and not just a diploma mill.
Fossils to document a gradual, steady change from ancestral forms to the descendants. But this is not what the paleontologist finds. Instead, he or she finds gaps in just about every phyletic series. What's a phyletic series? Well, it's ancestors to descendants to descendants to descendants, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. supposed evolution through time, and in this they find major gaps.
You know,
This is so dumb.
this reminds
This
me.
is so freaking dumb.
This reminds me of a conversation I once heard between a well-respected professor and a somewhat well-respected orangutan named Dr. Banjo. Because, yeah, there's going to be gaps in everything. But you know what?
Yeah.
The gaps don't
Yeah.
negate the actual transitional forms. Because here's the thing, right? Any number of transitional forms, you can just point to, well, now you have another gap. Okay, that's true. Any finite number of transitional forms, there's going to be gaps between. But here's the thing. Evolution predicts that we find the transitional forms. Creationism predicts that we shouldn't find transitional forms. But it can accommodate them being found. Which means when we find transitional forms, it is evidence in favor of evolution. And in fact, it is evidence against creationism. The fact that we have transitional forms, and we have far more that are on this slideshow, by the way. These are just the transitional forms that were between organisms that were well known enough that I thought they fit, and also had good enough pictures that I could put them into a slideshow. I didn't show you the thousands upon thousands of transitional foramina that are found in like limestone deposits that form perfectly smooth series through hundreds of millions of years worth of limestone. Because, quite frankly, no one wants to look at tiny little, microfossil shells for an entire slideshow.
And this is also really freaking dumb because we oversimplify the diagrams of transitions. Because if let's just pretend for a moment that you were able to find every single example of a species throughout its developmental history, that would be boring as heck. Because you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between two individual species. You have to pick out the big examples of changes. I still am just baffled as to what they think they're asking for.
Well,
You don't go from
when you dig
one
down
species to some completely different in every conceivable way version of that species.
when you dig down to it, most of the time when creationists ask for something in order to be convinced of evolution, it's something that would not only not be predicted by evolution, but would actually tend towards falsifying evolution if you actually found it. For $4.99, roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer says, if there was a global flood, wouldn't there be far less gaps in the fossil record? So, kind of. So we would expect a larger swath than we would expect otherwise of the organisms of Earth to have been preserved. But would there be more or fewer gaps in terms of what we would then see as transitional series, right? Like, would there be fewer transitional groups between, say, primitive Miocene apes and modern humans? I don't know how to answer that, right? Because the thing is, creationism doesn't predict any transitional forms. And they should look like gaps, even if the flood model were correct. So really, there should be more gaps in terms of transitional forms, but we should have a larger actual sampling of what actually existed, which means that the gaps just they're not filled in by anything we just don't have a fossil of. So on the one hand, I would say, if young Earth creationism were true, I would predict essentially entirely just nothing but gaps for morphological transitional, like transitions in morphospace between what would otherwise be considered related species. But I would expect there to be a larger sampling of the total life that has ever existed. So that's my complicated answer to that question. I always hate when people ask a relatively simple question and it sounds like you should have an easy answer, but it's like, well, okay, it's actually super complicated. I always feel like I'm not doing a good job of just giving them a nice bite-sized answer, which is probably what they want. But it's like, you unknowingly asked a really complicated question.
Well, that's the thing too, is this is something that also came up in the stream that I watched this week, is when you're a scholar in a particular field and an audience member asks you a question, you have to do this calculus of how accurate of an answer can I give you versus what are you really asking?
Yeah, and also how much
versus
of it
what
are
are
you
going
going
to
to
understand?
Yeah.
So at that point
dumb.
it was it's not that you're dumb, it's just that there's more nuance going on here. So it's if somebody asks a biblical scholar, did the Exodus happen? The answer is not a simple yes or no.
Yeah.
But what they usually mean is, did it happen as presented in the text? That answer is no. But the answer of, hey, did some disparate Canaanite and other tribes come out of a place that was under Egyptian hegemony? Yeah, probably. I mean,
yeah.
the legend probably originated somewhere, but like as presented in the text, the answer is no. So it's like, it's not the fully correct answer, but it's an answer to the question that they really were asking. So,
which actually came up in that Diablo critic stream, which I
that's why that was on my mind, because I just finished like catching up to that last night.
Yeah. Let's see. Off Journey for $5 says Discovery Institute is a young Earth creationist. It may thus be, quote, evolutionist in Dino Dave's mind, which is funny since the Discovery Institute contains content that Dino Dave likes is that which claims to debunk evolution. Yeah, like he's not going to be on board with their like old Earth stuff. Although actually they do have a few young Earthers working for them. They just don't talk about the age of the Earth very much. And when you actually press some of them, like James Tour is, I don't think he's employed by them, but he writes for them and they cite him, and so they're closely associated.
They may not be explicitly young Earth creationist, but they don't have to be, because a lot of their work requires
that's why I was
like
mentioning
a young Earth
James Tour, because when pressed on the age of the Earth, James Tour just claims a lack of belief on the age of the Earth. Which, here's the thing. If you're wishy-washy on the age of the Earth, it's just like being wishy-washy on the age of the Earth, or sorry, the shape of the Earth. We know you're a flat Earther when you're like, well, I don't think I'm a flat Earther, I'm just a globe skeptic. Okay, you're a flat Earther.
I'm a globe skeptic. No, you're a flat Earther, just say it.
Yeah, when you're like,
just be honest.
Well, I'm an old Earth skeptic. You're just a young Earther. And sure, I'm sure that in your mind you have some nuance in mind or whatever. Come on. You're a flat Earther / young Earther. And again, there's really not much of a difference between believing in a young Earth versus a flat Earth. There's just as much evidence for the flat Earth as for the young Earth, and there's just as much evidence against the flat Earth as the young Earth.
That's another debate interview that I watched this week, is somebody talking to Kent Hovind, and they just straight up mentioned flat Earthers. And Kent Hovind goes, yeah, well, we know the flat Earth's not true. Like, NASA provides all these photos and measurements and and I was laughing so hard because I'm like, dude, you literally are self-aware wolf right now. Mm-hmm. You can't cite NASA and all of the telescope data and all the measurements we've taken and all of the moon missions, and then just go, yeah, but the universe isn't as old as they say it is. Like, no!
Yeah.
You can't do it. No.
Yeah. Sorry, young Earthers. NASA isn't your friend, just like it's not a friend to the young Earthers. Or sorry, flat Earthers.
Nope.
You know what? I'm just going to call them wrong Earthers, and we're just going to group them together, and we're going to continue on. That's my new collective noun for flat Earthers and young Earthers. They're just wrong Earthers.
And young Earthers, that's much better umbrella, I think. Wrong Earthers. Yeah.
They can't clearly identify, okay, this evolved into that, evolved into that, and evolved into that.
Yeah, that's because that's not
Dr.
how
Banjo.
phylogeny works. Let's take another tree. Heather, do hyenas count as dog or cat coon? Technically neither, but they're closer to cats. Sorry, dat or cog. I misread it. I'm going to go start over.
Yeah, dat or cogs.
Do hyenas count as dat or cog coon? Which is actually really great because they're a fellow form, right? They're in the cat side of the carnivore family tree, but they look and act like canids for the most part. The only real exception is like their scent marking behaviors are much more cat-like than they are canine-like.
It's just like foxes. It's cat software running on dog hardware.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so Heather says, well, as far as I know, Michael Behe is old Earth creationist. Yes, he is. This is why I said they have young Earthers in the Discovery Institute. But the Discovery Institute is not necessarily itself a young Earth organization. They are cordial to young Earthers and employ young Earthers, but they also are cordial and employ old Earthers because ultimately their goal isn't to talk about the age of the Earth. And you know what? I'm not going to fault them for that, for saying like that's not what we want to talk about. That's fine. If you have things that matter but you don't want to talk to them about them, that's great. I have those things, right? Like there's a reason that I'm not having like big discussions about politics on this channel. It's because that's important stuff, but it's not what people are here for, so it's okay.
It's not the purview of your channel. Yeah. Ancestral Clydesdale Megafauna says Alt-Earth.
Alt-Earth?
Alt-Earth.
Earth. All right, Earth. I like it. All right.
Like the goddamn dome.
Here we go.
Now you can make up stories. Look, you can...
Oh, right. I was going to talk about the Phylogenies. Thanks, Dino Dave, for reminding me by saying nothing related, but just jogging my memory. Okay, so when you find an organism in the fossil record, chances are that it is one member of not just a species, but that species itself is a member of a group of organisms that are all closely related in the same way that a current genus is related, but that you don't have members of, right? So, for instance, when we find Triceratops horridus, right, there were probably other Triceratops out there that we just don't have fossils of. Maybe because they were living in environments that weren't conducive to fossilization, like Triceratops horridus was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't necessarily assume that Triceratops horridus, and then, at a different time, Triceratops porsus, were just the only members of that group. So similarly, when we find, like, say, Hyracotherium, which is very, very early horse or equid, we don't assume that Hyracotherium was the only member of its group of very horse-like early parasodactyls. But we know it's more closely related to horses than it is to any other currently living parasodactyl, like the rhinoceros or the tapir, the only other two groups that are currently around. But we also know it wasn't a Calicothere, which is another extinct group. We're kind of like horse sloth gorillas.
Horse sloth gorillas.
Have you seen
man-bear pig?
Have you seen a Calicothere skeleton? Or just a reconstruction?
Type it in our chat and I'll look it up while you're explaining.
You might have to try a couple variations of spelling because I'm not positive, but
that's okay. I'm pretty sure that Google will figure it out eventually.
Yeah, there you go. But do we know that Hyracotherium is literally ancestral to the modern horse? No, because there's no way to check, right? And if it were a member of a group of organisms, all of whom had this similar transitional morphology, but in different degrees, then we don't have
a horse bear gorilla.
Horse bear gorilla? But look at the claws. They turn in like a sloth claws.
Horse sloth gorilla. I can't believe these animals are real. What the heck, evolution?
Evolution is just like, okay, take a horse, pop on sloth claws, and then morph its body to be the same shape as a gorilla's, but also make it like 20 feet tall. That's an exaggeration. It's more like 12, but still. Yeah, evolution, man. Oh, there's a CH. It's CH. Calicothere.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. Like I said, Google figured it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they exist. Guys, feel free to go Google CHALICOTHERE. Calicothere. Or the Calicothere like Phylogenies just put in chat. Yeah, feel free to Google it. They're crazy. Anyway. So no matter how many transitional forms we find, no matter how smooth of a gradient we can make by lining them up, we can never actually say with a high degree of confidence that the points that we have in this series are directly ancestral or directly descendants of the ones that came earlier. Because that's not how we do things in science. We can't make that claim. But the only reason to expect them to exist is if the broad aspects of the evolutionary descent is true, right? There's no reason why we should have so many...
Nitro Indigo in the chat says TV tropes called Calicotheres a literal Donkey Kong, and they always associate that phrase with them.
Nice. Yeah, they do kind of look like Donkey Kong.
A literal Donkey Kong.
So we're never going to come up with a transitional series and then just say, well, now we know that these are the ancestors and descendants, with very few exceptions. Like if we can get paleo DNA. Like if we can get DNA like we have from certain Homo groups from, genus Homo, then we might be able to make that argument. But short of that, it's never going to happen because that's just not how science works.
You can take any large collection of things and you can say, well, I think this is similar to that or something, and you can kind of line things up, right?
Yeah, but you can't do it in a nested hierarchy, my guy. So we're going to take a drink. We're going to talk about nested hierarchies. So one of my favorite examples of an attempt to show that nested hierarchies can be made all over the place was back when the Donnie Deals Brain Trust, Donnie Badinsky and company, like Matt Nylor and his bunch, they decided to create a nested hierarchy of vehicles. But they failed badly, right? For one thing, they had bikes as a type of... they had wheeled vehicles as a category, right? But it was a category of motorized vehicles. And inside the category of wheeled vehicles was the bicycle. Now, remind me, Vishanti, do bicycles have motors?
Bicycles?
Right. Not motorbikes.
No.
Not motorcycles.
Bicycles, no.
Right. So, in putting wheeled vehicles under the category of motorized vehicles, and then including bicycles in that category, Did they just show that, in fact, no, you can't put vehicles into a nested hierarchy?
Like, yeah, no. I mean, the only time I've seen bikes with motors is when people modify them.
Yeah, and then it's a motorbike.
Yeah, I mean, technically. Yeah.
So, Video Swansea returning says, please don't call SFTs a brain trust. Here's the thing. It's a very obviously ironic term, right?
And yet again, use living specimens for your analogies challenge impossible.
Right. And so the thing is, when we actually do get designed things like vehicles, we can put them into groups, but we can't put them into objective nested hierarchies. Because you can always find ways in which the hierarchy is violated. Roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer for $1.99 says, genomics exists, Dino Dave. Yeah, it does. It does, Dino Dave. That's a thing. And so you cannot easily draw this analogy, like Vishanti's pointing out. And one of the big reasons is because designed non-biological things actually can't be put into nested hierarchies. Like, there's a reason that most of Linnaeus's work has stood the test of time. It's because he was observing objective nesting that really existed for a reason. He didn't know what the reason was, which is why the best he could do is like, well, God just designed things that way according to his plan, which isn't an explanation. It doesn't give us any predictive power. But when we actually look at the real world of things that we know are designed because we watch them be, we don't see a nested hierarchy.
Yeah.
So,
and it's just like they pick inanimate objects that they're not biological, they can't reproduce, they're not under any selection pressure, and they try to go, well, see, these things are created. It's like, look, those aren't alive.
Actually, I think
this does not work as an analogy.
We might be able to get another feeder video.
Hey!
Possible.
All right.
Not guaranteed, but we'll see. Punk for $10 getting us closer to that feeder video says, what, you mean we've never found a single unbroken familial line of organisms stretching back millions of years, all fossilized together? Evolution must be fake then. Yes, that is exactly what that means.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say, like, I know you have special, like, Dapper skins for various goals. Would you consider adding in your Dormammu Dapper to be one of those options? Because you have the Lightning Dapper and the Mecha Dapper and the Feeder Dapper.
I'm considering it, but I'm also considering just keeping it as an October special. Because then it might be more special that way. So I'm not sure. I'm
just
here's what
very biased because I really like the design.
I know. Here's what I'm going to say, guys. This is me soliciting feedback. So in chat or in comments on this video, maybe a few later videos, let me know whether you think that my Spooky Dapper should be put into the just like the rotation for special avatars when you guys hit that number, or whether I should restrict it to just being for October specials, regardless of whether or not you guys have, you know, hit a target for a new avatar. Because what I did for October was basically every time we hit that, I would just keep a queue going, and then I just went through the queue after October finished. But for October, I did the Ghost and the Dormammu Dapper. So, all right, here we go.
You can do that with Legos. You can do that with, you know, seashells. You can do whatever you want.
Actually, you can do it with seashells, which are, well, technically not alive. They are produced by living things. And you can do it specifically because they evolved. I'm going to take a drink for this guy, just giving an example that's like, yeah, man, that's specifically because of evolution. Do you think this guy thinks that seashells are man-made and designed by humans? He might.
Vadim is asking, or saying, I fail to recall Doctor Strange's best artists. Doctor Strange has had some good ones. He's had some not as good ones.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty iffy art from Doctor Strange, if I'm being honest.
I mean, but like, listen, I'm not gonna dunk on Doctor Strange's art too much. The only times I ever really have quibbles is when they mess up like key features, like
his gray
if they make his eyes blue instead of gray, and I'm like, they're literally gray. This is not hard. This is a colorist error. Or if they give him dark brown hair instead of black, like it's supposed to be black. That would be like making Diana Prince Wonder Woman blonde. It'd be like, come on, man, really? Come on.
Yeah.
His face art and his like character designs over the years, like mostly are pretty good. I don't have too many things to say about that. It's mostly. I have so much to say about Iron Man artists, though. Like, I will talk your ear off about all the good ones and the really bad ones.
Becca Justiniano says, I prefer you keep it in October. Okay. I mean, I'll be honest, that's the way I'm currently leaning. right, is just to have a set of October-specific, a couple October-specific avatars.
Yeah, and Ancestral Clydesdale Megafauna says, Ditko used Doctor Strange's arcane hand gestures to show off his hand drawing skills, and did very well.
Nice. Off Journey with their 10th super ever on live stream, thank you very much, says, first automobiles branched from train lineage, then motorcycles branched from the audio lineage, then some motorcycles lost their motors. Obviously. Right. Where do tricycles fit in? Is that the transitional form between a bicycle and a car?
I'll tell you a story. Let's talk about fossil machines. Let's say that there's a nuclear war and everybody...
Okay, so...
Oh god, somebody just mentioned Greg Land.
Planet Earth gets wiped out by a few people, and they're just like subsistence living.
So Fallout. What if Fallout? Got it.
And then maybe a few generations later, they kind of establish a civilization, so they have enough free time, they start digging in the earth.
You just say, what if Fallout happened? You can skip all of this.
And they find fossil machines.
I mean, they wouldn't be
fossil
fossil machines.
Yeah. Are you going to replace the metal and plastic components of trains and tractors with...
Even then, they wouldn't be fossils.
Yeah, but it's like, are you going to get tractor permineralization?
Here's the thing. A fossil is the remains of an organism or signs of an organism that's from more than 10,000 years ago. That's it. It doesn't technically even have to be permineralized. But if it's that, it's a fossil. If it's not a fossil. So no matter how permineralized a train is, no matter how old it is, a 1 million year old fully permineralized train, not a fossil. It's interesting. It's an artifact, but it's not a fossil.
But it was never alive.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's Thomas the Tank Engine, in which case I have some questions.
Well, apparently, like, Thomas the Tank has established that the trains are in fact mortal and can die because there was like a dead train in one episode. It's like, oh, that brings up so many questions about the Thomas the Tank universe.
This is, I have questions about the Cars universe as well, but we could talk about those as well because there have been some historical references in the Cars universe, and you're like, wait.
So this happened in the Cars universe?
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's things that are, like, referenced offhand in the Cars universe, and then you start thinking about it, and you're like, oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Nitro Indigo says, aren't artifacts signs of organisms? So yes, but when I say signs, it has to be something that is actually... so it's a bit of an arbitrary distinction, and I'll grant you that. But generally it has to be signs that were not designed and aren't tools. So things like footprints, body imprints, coprolites, marks from things like... We have what we think is actually probably a sauropod vomit crater. Because if a sauropod vomits, it's actually going to leave a pretty big dent in the ground because of how tall they are. Actually, someone did the math on it in an actual paleontology paper, and they determined that most organisms would be killed if they were hit by sauropod vomit because of the velocity and likely volume of sauropod vomit.
Things I literally never thought about until today. Thanks, Dapper.
You're welcome. I mean, isn't that part of the reason you show up to this channel?
Yeah, and also people talking about Eldritch Horror, Thomas the Tank Engine stuff.
I mean, today we get Eldritch Horror, Thomas the Tank. We get you learning about the medical treatment for priapism. And sauropod vomit.
I've heard it before. I just, for whatever reason, like...
Just struck you?
Into my...
Well, also now you know about Calicotheres.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I learned about Calicotheres.
And one guy finds this fossil called a tractor.
Ooh.
Another character finds this fossil called a...
Thanks, Spock. What do your sensors say?
Yeah, I know.
Locomotive. And then someone comes along and says, I think that tractor, over millions of years, evolved into that locomotive.
Okay, so here's a question. Would a nuclear war, followed by several generations of, redeveloping civilization, result in miles of sediment of different depositional environments, all looking just like sediment being deposited at the time of the current scientists, all of which actually have things like radiometric dates that would actually allow you to date these as different ages significantly? No, they wouldn't. So no one would do this. Because even if you ignore the fact that these aren't living things that can actually evolve, it doesn't actually... They're not actually separated in time by enough time for this to make any sense in the first place. Because one of the things you gotta remember is The only reason anyone thinks that the geological column is the result of a short process is because some people are dogmatically dedicated to that belief in the first place. No one coming to geology, independent of a prior belief in a young Earth, would come to the conclusion of a young Earth. You might not come to the exact actual conclusion of 4.5 billion years. In fact, you probably wouldn't unless you had lots of radiometric dating and other stuff that we know about. But there's a reason that when people first started estimating the age of the Earth based on something other than the Bible, they all came up with answers that were in the millions of years. And in some cases, the billions of years. DM...
Go ahead, it's a super chat. I'll read it after.
DM Tractor Permineralization Wing for $2 says AIG is a bag of dicks, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and a drink emoji, and we will in fact take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
I was so glad somebody took that up. I was hoping. Crypto457 says, Dapper, so you're saying that sauropod puke is like kaiju laser blast. Got it.
Kind of, although shorter range, right? Because, you can't project that across the city. But yeah, it's similar.
I really just want to shout out everyone that's had the opportunity to see Godzilla -1 because holy shit, those laser blasts though.
Oh, weird. It's actually on the line as to whether or not we're gonna get feeders next time.
Oh, okay.
Type in your number and I'll still see it.
And the other guy says, nah, that's not possible. And they
Yeah, we're like 32 away. We could do it.
Nice, okay.
keep digging and they find the missing link. There it is!
Thanks, Dr. Banjo.
Okay, even ignoring all the problems with the idea of intermediates and the evolution of vehicles in terms of biological evolution, how is a Model T intermediate between a train and a tractor?
I don't even want to have this conversation because none of these are alive.
Well, it's true, but I'm just like, even if we're people who think that this is a good comparison to make, I don't get how that's in the middle, right? Like, that train looks like a coal-burning train, whereas both the tractor and the Model T are burning gasoline or petrol. I mean, both the tractor and the Model T are four-wheeled vehicles with air-filled tires that, steer with a steering column instead of, like, switching tracks. Like, the tractor and the Model T are basically the same, and neither one seems closer to the train than the other to me. In fact, if anything, I would think that the tractor would be closer to the train just because it's bigger than a Model T, right? Like, that's the only similarity I can think. I just don't get how he comes up with this. Because sometimes with these analogies, I can understand like why you're like, oh yeah, like the spork, it's like transitional between a fork and a spoon. Okay, yeah, I get why that makes some kind of dumb sense, right? I get it. But this one, I have nothing. I'm just gonna take a drink because
pretend that I'm doing a Rod Serling voice. Nita in the chat says, "Imagine if you will, you're in the Cars universe."
Roasting the transmissible parasitic dog killer for $49.99, taking us well over the feeders number. Says cats are fluid-like animals. I cannot
It's true.
disagree.
Cats are liquid. Yeah,
they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're kind of like Odo, where it's like they can form into a solid if they need to, but their natural state is just a liquid.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
And remember,
maybe Odo is like the hyper evolved form of cats.
Oh, there you go. The founders are actually the endpoint of cat evolution. Are cats. Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, some people are gender fluid, and Odo is a gendered fluid.
That's correct.
It proves it, right? Now I'm being a little bit facetious here.
A little bit? Also, dude, come on. Why isn't your black level on the tractor the same as it is on the Model T and the train? Just drop that clip art of a tractor into your image editor of choice, take the levels, and bring the black slider up until you get to the first bar.
He does not even know how to do that.
You're right. I hate it. Because it's like, this is like a 3-second fix in any image editor, and you just didn't bother. And I hate it so much. Not that I'm perfect.
DM Tractor Permineralization Wing says, oh, the Chevy Transitional Fossil? Sure. Like we're putting in keys. We're going plaid.
Obviously, we know that, a steam engine locomotive was before either of these two. And
okay. Then why didn't you put the steam engine down at the bottom? Because this looks like a progression from the tractor to the... Okay, whatever.
There's major differences besides just the size.
I'm looking at this as if it could possibly make sense even in his own brain, and I don't think he even thought about it that much.
You can just make up stories, my friends.
Yeah, you can. The difference is some stories are testable. And in fact, this story is testable. And we can test it, and we're going to find out that it doesn't work. But when thousands of people over hundreds of years, well, okay, coming up to hundreds of years, well over 100 years. But yeah, it'll probably be 200 years.
I mean, we had steam-powered stuff in like the 18th
I'm thinking of
century.
Evolution in this case.
But okay, yeah, evolution, yeah, that's fair.
So,
that's fair.
Like a century and a half plus, right? Thousands of people testing it for well over a century. They failed to falsify the broad story of evolution, whereas it would take probably less than a day to falsify the broad story of transportation evolution in a biological sense. All it would probably have to require is to say, hey, none of these tractors or trains or vehicles of any kind seem to have a mechanism to produce more of themselves. So they probably didn't evolve. Case closed. There you go. You just falsified the evolution of tractors into trains or whatever.
Doesn't make it science. That's just someone's hypothesis.
Projection.
Here's the thing. Making up a story as a hypothesis is part of science. So I'm going to take a drink.
Also, Discord folks, thank you for all the kitty cat pics. That's just serotonin right now is all the kitty stuff.
Nice.
Kitties.
So, here's the thing, right? Making up a story, that's what hypothesis building is, right? You take a look at what evidence you have so far, and you say, okay, here's a possible idea as to what explains. What's the next step? You test it. And if your test fails, you go back and figure out why. It might mean you have to disregard your hypothesis entirely. It might mean you have to modify your hypothesis, or it might mean you find some kind of technical error with your methods for conducting your experiment or other test, right? But what is it that creationists are always the most loath to do when it comes to science? Because they're great at making up stories. They do it all the time. The thing they tend not to do is actually put their stories to rigorous testing and then discarding the parts of them that don't work. For example, hey, there are lots of tests you can do for accelerated nuclear decay. Here's one of them. The basic way that you get accelerated nuclear decay is by changing the strength of the nuclear forces, either weak or strong or both. Okay, cool. So that's a possible mechanism. So let's test it. If that were to be weaker, then certain nuclides that are currently stable would in fact become unstable, which would result in decay chains that we do not see, and also it would result in the enrichment of what would now be new stable elements, or not new elements, but nuclides that are stable under the circumstance, that are still stable, but they would be enriched relative to what we would expect, and we would see the depletion of relatively large but still unstable isotopes today, ones that are on the cusp, where they're stable, but if you added, say, a few more neutrons, they might become unstable. We should expect to see a depletion of those in just the rock record from the period of accelerated nuclear decay. Hey, Vishanti, you want to take a wild guess as to whether we see depletion of what might be unstable elements and enrichment of what would then become the only stable ones in rocks from the flood when accelerated nuclear decay was there? Do you think we see that?
That's too long of a question, and I wasn't paying attention because I was laughing.
Do you think we see this prediction of accelerated nuclear decay when we look? Or do you think we see not? You do think we see the prediction that we would make from accelerated nuclear decay? Sorry, I lost you, didn't I? My bad.
Because again, I wasn't paying attention. I'm just laughing at the chat right now.
Here, I'll simplify it down even more. When we test creationist predictions, do you think they come true?
No.
Yeah, no, they don't. We don't see this abundance of what would then be stable isotopes versus depletion of what would then be non-stable isotopes. Here's another thing. Accelerated nuclear decay means that nuclear decay happens more often. Shanti, you're aware of nuclear reactors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the basic mechanism that they work by? Like, how do you get the energy out of them?
Actually, I don't think my answer's correct.
Oh, that's okay. It's heat.
Yeah, because like my brain went steam because of the water cooling the rock. And then I was like, wait, no.
I mean,
no,
steam
no.
is right.
That's
you boil water.
Yeah, I know, but
turn
I
it
was
into
like,
steam.
That's not like. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
heat. It's just not specifically.
Right. Nuclear reactors generate heat. That's how you get the power out of them. They don't just directly produce like voltage potentials or something, right? That's not how they work. It would be cool, but that's not how they work. The way they
We're
work
just gonna
is
split atoms and focus the energy in one single direction. Like, no, that's no.
So they get hot. So here's the thing. They get hotter when there's more nuclear decay in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was the whole Chernobyl problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if accelerated nuclear decay happened, it would heat the rocks that it happened in, which would mean, and we can calculate how much it should heat them. And what it would mean is that virtually all igneous rocks that we find, other than very recent ones, like post-flood ones, should all have metamorphosed into other metamorphic rocks. There shouldn't be any ancient basalt left, right? It should have all metamorphosed.
How about it?
Weird how we have ancient basalt still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna read the chats that were making me laugh.
Okay.
Rosina Keller, we can't sequence tractor genomes.
No, we cannot.
And Alessandra Hedgeblog Durbin, did sand evolve to computer chips?
Yes, I'm going to go with yes. Of course it did. Because computer chips are better at surviving in this modern human-dominated world. So some sand got together and had babies that were just a little bit more like computer chips.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they also fused together into big long sheets of silica. It's kind of like how, you know, if you go through the Celivis quest line in Elden Ring, where you take that one sorcerer lady and you turn her into a weird stone ball made of stone faces that's also a conglomerate of a bunch of other sorcerers. And that just kind of ruins her life, but apparently it's what she wanted anyway. Kind of like that, but with sand instead of sorcerers. Which also, I've never actually gone through that quest line. Because it starts with like, hey, what if you take people and like erase all of their free will in their minds and make them mindless puppet slaves? And I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. But I just don't go through the quest line.
Nitro Indigo chemical evolution.
All right, here we go.
And we need to be careful how we treat these historical speculations as compared to observable and repeatable science that can be verified.
You mean like evolution? Here's the
Yeah.
thing. Evolution has experiments. Evolution is repeatable. Evolution can be verified, and more importantly, falsified. Verification is easy, right? Oh, hey, look, this piece of evidence is corresponds to what I would expect if this thing is true. Cool. I guess I've verified my idea then. Okay, cool. Have you checked for evidence that would contradict? Right? In fact, there's actually
that's kind of the point.
there's actually a really good Veritasium video about this, right? And he goes around, the Veritasium guy whose name I don't know. He goes around asking people about the he's got this rule in his head for numbers that and a sequence of numbers can either meet the rule or not meet the rule. And he starts out with a sequence like 2, 4, 8, 16, say, right? And so everyone thinks, well, the sequence rule is that it doubles. So they all ask, and he says, you can find out what the rule is by either asking me, say, is this your rule? And then providing a rule. The other thing you can do is you can give me a sequence of numbers and ask if they meet the rule, right? So everyone just keeps asking him sequence of numbers that double and asking whether that meets the rule or not. And he says yes. And then when they propose that the rule is just that it doubles, he says no. The only people who get it right are the people who try to figure out sequences of numbers that don't meet his rule, which is a tiny minority of them, right? Because everyone initially thinks, well, it's doubling. But if you think it's doubling, maybe you ask one question to see if it's doubling that confirms it, right? Like you say, okay, what about 3, 6, 3, 6, 12, 24? And I was like, yes, that meets the rule. Okay, well, now you know doubling is at least possible. But only the people who then go to try to figure out a sequence that doesn't fit their rule, they try to falsify their rule. And so they'll say like 1, 8, 32. And then he'll say, yes, that meets the rule. Because his actual rule is just numbers that go up, right? The number has to be bigger than the previous one. That's the whole rule. Those are the only people who can actually figure out what his rule is in this video. And it's pointing out that what humans like to do is they like to find confirming evidence for their current ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very unusual person who initially has the intuition to look for possible disconfirming evidence. But if you don't...
Selection bias.
Yep, but that's the thing that's key, is the falsification. Confirmation is easy. Anyone can confirm just about anything. Falsification, though, that's the key. Because if your idea is falsifiable, but can't be falsified by anyone who's actually trying, now you have good reason to think your idea has a very high likelihood of at least being mostly right. All right, we're going to continue on. We don't have that much longer. We're almost done. Well, not with Dino Dave. We're almost done with today. Dino Dave still has 40 minutes left.
With the scientific method. Now, as we dig into these rock layers, we find various things, and people begin to date them. For example, they'll say, well, this down under is a lot more simple than this that was found up above.
That is not how anything is ever dated.
That's not how that works.
I'm just going to take a drink. Look.
What does simple even mean, like, in this context?
I mean, there is that. So here's the thing. Strata are relatively dated via the principle of superposition, where once you correct for any uplift or tilting, lower layers have to be older than upper layers, because how would you deposit, say, like, let's say you had a layer of conglomerate and a layer of sandstone, and the sandstone is under the layer of conglomerate. How could you deposit sandstone under a layer of conglomerate, right? Like, how would that even work? There's no physical way to make it work. Roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer for $1.99 says, you promised there wouldn't be math. Did I promise that?
I remember that.
I don't remember that. That doesn't seem like a promise I would make, given how much I use math in, like, every day. Like, Vijay, remember all those times I show you, like, all my math-based node trees in Blender that just create some cool shape, and you're just like, yeah, that's just wizardry.
Yeah,
that's the magic.
That's sorcery. Yeah.
I'm conjuring things out of pure math.
Mm-hmm. This is witchcraft. This will get you burned at the stake.
Probably. As long as it's the winter, okay. I don't want to get burned at stake in the summer. That's too hot.
I mean, you'll probably die of smoke inhalation well before that, but yeah.
True. Cat T, who's been a member for 4 months, is at the annual level, says AIG or sand put full of really big worms. With an AIG, we'll take a drink for that.
Worm sign.
I just saw a really good one. I don't remember where, but someone started. It was this bed with like a sand-colored cover on it. They started like thumping the bed rhythmically with their fist, and then the shape comes closer, and a cat pops up. I was like, "That's great."
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just gonna hit play.
Good stuff.
And a lot of times we don't always find them all in the same area. We just find maybe some limestone with something in it, and they have to date this limestone to see, okay, well, where is it? Is it deep? Is it high? Here.
Okay, also, it has something to do with how deep or high it is, right? Because any amount of overburdening strata can be removed by erosion, or just higher layers can just not have ever been deposited, right? So it has no... Your distance from, like, your elevation or your distance from the surrounding landscape or something has nothing to do with how old things are. That's not how it works.
Silver Harlow, 2 years a member. Says kind of like an anniversary of sorts, I guess.
No, I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm sorry so much, Silver Harlow. Yeah, member for 24 months at the Tetrapod level.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an anniversary. Yeah, sorry about that. Look, I'm going to take a drink for Dapper's Professional because I missed that. That was on me. Guys, if I miss your membership or your milestone chat, please spam tag me about it, because either I'll notice or my co-host will notice or something, and I am not trying to miss your super chats and milestone chats. I just make mistakes sometimes. And look, it's not easy to produce and host. It's a lot. It is a lot. Yeah. So please forgive me. It is not intentional. Although I do like to think that I do a reasonably good job of producing for someone who's also hosting.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I mean, I was just hosting that Diablo Critics episode, and just the hosting itself was... I mean, I couldn't just wander away and ignore what was going on, even when I wasn't, I wasn't in the studio, right? I was backstage. Like, it's still a lot of work. So.
In this particular location. And my question is this. Okay. How do you tell the difference between 100 million year old Jurassic limestone and 600 million year old Cambrian limestone?
That's a great question, and there are actually some great answers. So there's a few things. One is that you compare different limestone and just other things across geography and upwards, through the column. And so if just given a small chunk of limestone, it might be difficult to tell. But if you can actually know where it came from, then you can look at the stratigraphic map of that area. And so a few things happen. One is we notice that certain organisms are only associated with certain layers, and those layers have names, and that's the relative dating, right? And so we can say for certain that, okay, this is Cambrian limestone because it has Cambrian index fossils. Because these organisms are only known from the Cambrian. Great. And these organisms here with the, say, what was it? 100 million year old Jurassic? Okay, so then when we say, like, maybe, all right, there are ammonites in this limestone, and there are trilobites in this other limestone. Trilobites as a whole are not actually an index fossil for the Cambrian. I'm just simplifying with things people have heard of. All right, cool. So now we have a good idea that because we never find trilobites above the Cambrian, or sorry, above the Paleozoic, say, and we never find ammonites down in the Paleozoic. Okay, now we have a good idea. So then, if we want to know how old it is in terms of actual numbers, what we do is we check with radiometric dating. Now, you can't directly radiometrically date limestone, because radiometric dating only works on igneous rocks, and it can be useful in determining the history of metamorphic rocks, but it's harder to say when the rock actually formed as an igneous rock, if it's a metamorphic rock that started out as igneous. It's harder to use radiometric dating. That's relatively complicated because different minerals within the now metamorphic rock have what are called different closure temperatures, which is a temperature below which they can't really leach in or out relative isotopes, or, well, atoms. But as they metamorphose, different minerals will go above that temperature at different times. So different minerals will give you different ages, which tells you basically the last time they cooled below their closure temperature. But does that tell you when the stone formed? No, it tells you something about the heating history of that metamorphic rock. So it's a little bit complicated with metamorphic rock. Igneous rock, though, is relatively straightforward, assuming that you can actually check for certain things. Like, for instance, if it's an intrusive metamorphic rock, it's harder for it to outgas all of its argon, so you have to take that into account if you're going to, say, do like potassium argon dating, things like that. Or you might find that there's a whole lot of monazite. And if you include the monazite, then you're getting an unusually high argon reading because of incorporation of thorium-230, which monazite is known to differentially, like, it loves to pick up thorium instead of other elements like uranium. So there's caveats in there, right? But once you account for all of these, radiometric dating is how you get actual numbers. And we find that when we correlate these, yeah, Cambrian rocks consistently end up being older than Jurassic rocks. And now we have numbers that we can associate with it. So that's how you determine it. I hope that answered his question. But we're going to end it on that because it's, 57 minutes past. We've already been going for about 2 hours.
A combination of the weather and concentrated stupid is giving me a migraine.
Well, that means it's a really good time to wrap it up here. So first I want to say thank you very much to everyone who gifted memberships, who membership milestone chatted, and who super chatted. You guys are great. And also, hey, next time Vishanti's here, more feeders. We got the feeder number again.
Oh, yeah.
We did not get the Dapper Dinosaur new avatar number, but that's okay. That just means I'm going to keep using my default avatar, which is the one that's on screen, which is the real me, not just an avatar. That's how it works. Anyway, Vishanti, you got anything you want to announce that's coming up?
My schedule's real full for the next 2 weeks, so woo!
But not full with things that people can then go and see on the internet.
Well, one potentially is, but
you want to announce that one?
I will wait.
Okay.
I'll wait to announce that when it's done.
Fair enough. All right. So on Tuesday, we're going to be having Jackson with Jackson. With, of course, Jackson Wheat, the good Jackson. I don't currently have it scheduled, but I have confirmed with Charles Jackson. However, before that, on Monday, I was going to say Sunday, but that's wrong. Monday, I'm going to be over on Chesh's channel with Jackson, talking to a young Earth creationist. Basically, a young Earth creationist showed up in Jackson's shitter thread, and Jackson was like, well, if you want to debate, that's fine. And then Chesh offered her platform. It's going to be a Debate Hub show, which, in case you're wondering, yes, I did the logo for Debate Hub. And yes, Bent did the music for Debate Hub. And yes, it is heavily based on a different website with a similar name. But yeah, that's going to be on, I believe that's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. So, if it's not that, double check with Chesh's channel because it's already scheduled there. Then, then Tuesday, like I said, we have Jackson with Jackson coming up. Then on Thursday, we have part 4 of the Creepy Carl series, which is titled Clear, Glowing, Metallic Hydrogen Water Plasma. Now, that might just sound like a list of words that don't make sense together, but that is a thing that Karl Baugh proposes the vapor, or the firmament was made of. He thinks the firmament was a sphere encompassing Earth made of clear, glowing, metallic hydrogen, water, which, sure, yeah, that contradicts the whole idea of metallic hydrogen, and plasma, which also contradicts the idea that it was metallic hydrogen, and that it's water, because there's no such thing as water plasma, and hydrogen plasma can't be metallic. But don't worry about it. We also find out in that one that Karl Baugh thinks that the more light that comes from the sky, the easier it is to see the stars. Because light pollution is apparently a good thing for astronomy, according to Karl Baugh. Yeah, no. He literally, in that episode, makes the claim that as this light is coming into your eyes from the glowing plasma, that it makes it easier, not harder, to see the stars. I'm telling you, it is some of the stupidest thing I have ever encountered. It is bafflingly dumb. It's hard to even understand what he means. Yeah, Sophia says Carl's brain is plasma. I mean, it seems like it. Then on Saturday, currently the plan is to just be back doing more of this with some feeders. So, yeah. And then, of course, I'm going to just say next Thursday, the Incoherent Shouty Moron movie is coming out. That is a 4-hour... Actually, I don't think it's actually... Let me double check. I can find out. So, but yeah, that is the David Gottlieb supercut. And you might hear a little bit of it because I'm checking on my studio right now as to how long it is. But yeah, that's going to be all... What was that, 4 parts? Or is that 3 parts? I feel like it was 4, but I might be wrong. But yeah, anyway, that's going to be coming out that next Thursday. So if you enjoyed that series, you can watch it all with one click after that. Other than that, though, I think that is basically all that I'm going to announce. I want to say thank you again to everyone. You guys have been great. And yeah, there it is. 2 hours.
Don't forget to leave your suggestions for the 1-year Sal Cordova Bitchmade anniversary in the comments.
Yes. As well as whether or not you would prefer Dormammu Dapper and Ghost Dapper to be October exclusive that always happen, or whether they should just be folded into the regular rotation of special avatars that you guys can unlock with, meeting donation goals. And yeah, the David Gottlieb thing is 2 hours and 6 minutes and 6 seconds.
Woo!
I'm going to make one that's 6 hours and 66 minutes. That would just be 7 hours and 6 minutes.
Why don't you make it a different cut that's 6 minutes and 6 hours and 16 minutes?
Ah, there we go. All right. Well, anyway, everybody, thank you so much. We're going to get out of here. If you are interested, over on the Discord server, we are going to be watching the last 2 episodes of Power Ranger Ninja Storm and the first 2 episodes of Power Rangers Dino Thunder. And in Dino Thunder, hey, there's a professional paleontologist in the person of Dr. Thomas Oliver, who quit being a race car driver to go pursue his doctorate in paleontology.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a weird career path. But yeah, the last time we saw Tommy Oliver as a regular, he was leaving the Power Rangers to go be a race car driver. And then the next time we see him as a series regular, he's a paleontologist.
And happy Purim to any of my fellow tribe.
Yes, Purim is coming up. Is it this week?
Tomorrow.
Oh, geez.
Tomorrow night. Yeah, I know.
I'm now expecting a call from you tomorrow night about that, and you should have warned me. Not that I also couldn't have been keeping track.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind.
If you plan to call me for that, make sure that you remind me early so I can go get some booze, because if we're gonna hang out on Purim, it is obligatory that I get completely blasted.
Yeah, and I just got a new printing of the Megillah, so it's got really great typesetting and art in it. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. If you're wondering what Purim is, everybody, it's kind of like you know how basically Halloween is just Christian Purim. So just take the Christian parts out of Halloween,
yes,
and then add in the parts about Haman and whatnot.
Boo.
Yeah, boo. Exactly. All right, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to y'all later. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovend, Philgavacha, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, E2V, Strawberry Vein, Denny5252, Elron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey They Them, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.